زعل يعني.
So it's about 7 minutes past 7 now. So should we make a start? We've got a few people on the Zoom meeting. I think we've got a few more people watching on other platforms. So I think we're going to start the circle. Imam Faraj is going to do a short Quran recitation for us. And then Brother Abdallah is going to be presenting the circle today on Islamic words in the UK, inshallah. So we'll have a presentation for maybe 30, 40 minutes, however long. And then inshallah, we'll aim to finish before the Maghrib prayer. Brother Faraj, can I hand over to you, please?
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن في خلق السماوات والأرض واختلاف الليل والنهار لآيات لأولي الألباب الذين يذكرون الله قياما وقعودا ويتفكرون في خلق السماوات والأرض ربنا ما خلقت هذا باطلا سبحانك فقنا عذاب النار ربنا إنك من تدخل النار فقد أخزيته وما للظالمين من أنصار ربنا إنا سمعنا مناديا ينادي للإيمان أن آمنوا بربكم فآمنا ربنا فاغفر لنا ذنوبنا وكفر عنا سيئاتنا وتوفنا مع الأبرار ربنا وآتنا ما وعدتنا على رسلك ولا تخزنا يوم القيامة إنك لا تخلف الميعاد صدق الله العظيم.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you, Imam Faraj. So I think that brings us on to our presentation. So we've got Brother Abdallah here with us today, who will be talking about Islamic words in the UK. So just to say before we start, so if you have any questions and you're on Zoom, there's a little Q&A box. So you can pop any questions in the Q&A and we'll address them at the end. And you also have an opportunity to come off mute at that point and ask any questions to our presenter directly. If you're on another platform, so if on Facebook or YouTube, I'll try and keep an eye on the comments there. So if you've got any questions, put them in there. And again, we'll kind of raise them with Brother Abdallah at the end of the presentation. So that's everything I wanted to say. Brother Abdallah, can I hand over to you?
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. I may not be a very familiar face to everybody. The reason why this talk came up was I was discussing with Ali, and we were just talking about how when you're talking to people in the UK or in general, whatever the context applies, is how we have to be careful in the words that we use, because we might understand the meaning of the word, but the people that you're speaking to, the imagery that comes into their mind about the word that you use, it could be something completely different from what you're saying. And I just want to highlight as well, like I'm not a professional da'i or anything like that. So everything I'm talking about is just from personal experience, from growing up in the UK. Growing up here for 20 years. I've been to schools where I'm practically the only, immigrant there. So I've had to learn to use, or I had to learn to explain the words I use sometimes when I'm discussing Islam to people, or when I'm discussing something about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is what the talk is about. I'll just share my screen. So I'm going to make this a little bit interactive at times. So if you want to say something, I think just use the chat icon on Zoom, and I think on Facebook. Sorry, Ivan. If you can just have a look at what people might write in the comments section on the Facebook and whatever other
I will
platform.
try my best to keep an eye on it.
Sorry, yeah, thank you.
If you really want to speak as well on Zoom, there should be a little I think option to put your hand up somewhere. So I'll try and keep an eye on that as well. So if you want to put your hand up, I can bring you off mute and you can say something. So okay.
Inshallah. Okay, so like I said, this is the Islamic words in the UK. So specifically, I picked out just 5 words or 5 phrases. Obviously, there's a lot more than that, but I thought this is probably the words or phrases that I come across more often when I've discussed Islam with people. So to start off with, talk about worship. This is what I wanted to be interactive. So I'm going to ask everybody, what is worship in Islam? What is ibadah in Islam? What does it mean? What does it mean to worship Allah?
So if anyone wants to have to respond to that, feel free to put something in the chat box if you've got a view on what worship is in Islam. I was a bit quiet today.
Right, okay. No. Okay, so obviously the first thing is we know as Muslims, the reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us is because, just like the ayah says, and I did not create the jinn and mankind except to worship me. So our whole purpose of existence is worship. And in Islam, what worship means can be different from what, when you say worship to someone here in the UK, might understand from you. If I'm speaking to somebody and I say to them, oh, the reason why God created us is because he wants us to worship him. In people's minds, you'll think, what, so God just created you so you can pray 5 times a day, go to the mosque on Friday, and that's it. Like, to them, worship is just the kind of like ritualistic actions that you might do to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Obviously, in Islam, we know that worship is a lot more than just prayer and zakah and fasting. It's just like what this hadith says. And I'm going to put some nuggets in there, basically, just to kind of reminder for myself and reminder for everybody else for, what are these concepts and things like that. And obviously, I'm not a professional, so this is just a lay person's level kind of information. So like this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, do you know who is bankrupt? So yeah, he asked that to the companions. And the companion said, the one without money or goods is bankrupt. But what the Prophet ﷺ said was, what he meant is that, verily the bankrupt of my nation are those who come on the day of resurrection with prayers, fasting and charity, but also with insult, slander, consuming wealth, shedding blood and beating others. The oppressed will each be given from his deeds. If his good deeds run out before justice is fulfilled, then their sins will be cast upon him and he'll be thrown into the hellfire. So we know here clearly that obviously worship isn't just salah, fasting and zakah. It's a lot more than that in Islam. And just like this hadith, whoever has 3 traits, sorry, I can't even see whoever has 3 traits within himself will find the sweetness of faith. One who loves Allah and His Messenger more than anything, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. One who loves a servant only for the sake of Allah, and one who hates to turn back to unbelief after Allah has saved him, just as he hates to be thrown into the hellfire. And again, like this hadith, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "A man is not a believer who fills his stomach while his neighbor is hungry." And the other hadith is, "Every good deed is charity." And so in Islam, worship really is not just, again, simple, just salah, zakah, fasting, and that's it. It's a lot more than that. It's basically everything that you do for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is worship. And I think that's the important thing, is when you're discussing Islam to someone and you get, you're talking about the purpose of our existence, worship. To me, what I found is a good way, personally, from my own experience, is that, use the word worship, still use it, of course, but just to explain what that actually means. So, what does that actually mean in Islam? Because obviously people here have had a Christian background, or they know, a bit about the Christian history within the country. And so to them, worship can just mean something that you do in church. And obviously, like how we believe, alhamdulillah, it's worship is literally everything that you do for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Sorry, Brother Abdallah, there's a good point someone's made here on the chat, actually, that's just come in. So Brother Imran, he said, as well as salah, spending time with family, going to work, giving charity, yes, it can all be worship, which I think is the point you're making, isn't it? So
exactly. I'll give a summary now. I mean, I love this ayah as well, is that sort of Tawbah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "If your fathers, your sons, your brothers, your relatives, wealth which you have obtained, commerce wherein you fear decline, and dwellings with which you are pleased, are more beloved to you than Allah and His Messenger, and striving in His cause, then wait until Allah executes His command, and Allah does not guide the defiantly disobedient people." So even loving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not an option that we have. It's, you have to love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You have to love the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and you love him as much as you're as much from your heart. And that is ibadah. That is ibadah. It's to love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam as well. And so really, like, when I explain to someone what worship means in Islam, I use this summary of the meaning of worship in Islam. So it is to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to know His attributes, to know what is the purpose of our existence that He gave us. And just knowledge in general, knowledge in deen, knowledge in the whatever it is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. But primarily to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to know His attributes, to know who He is. And just like Imam Ghazali says in his Ihya, he says, "The merit of knowledge cannot be obscure, for it is the means for nearness to God." And it is to love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Ibn al-Qayyim says about this is that complete ubudiyya is a byproduct of complete love. And to fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to put all your hope on Him and to do everything for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is kind of in a nutshell what I say what worship is to when I speak to someone about Islam. And yeah, I mean, again, I'm giving you this from my own personal experience, so I might not be 100% right in the method that I'm explaining things, or as you see in the presentation, things you might think like, oh, would it be better to say this instead, or would it be better to maybe instead of using this word, use that word? And so if you feel like that, just write a comment down as well for that. So the second thing is salah. I at work or anywhere really, like with my friends who might not be Muslims, when I'm going to pray, I'm going to do my salah, I say, oh, I'm just going to go and pray. But really, when you speak to somebody here in the UK, and anywhere where this applies as well, is that when you say pray to somebody, to them, what that means is you're doing something that you're just asking God for things. That is a prayer. So you just, you go down your knees or whatever, and you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, oh, can you please help me with this? Can you please do that? Can you please do that for me? And so really, I mean, the word prayer that we use here more applies to dua and dhikr even. And the way that I actually like to look at what salah actually is it's like a spiritual program. I heard this from Hamza Sositz. I really like that explanation of it. It's just it's a method of that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, that at least 5 times throughout the day is to cut everything that you're doing and to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to do something that is ordered, that is disciplined, and remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and speaking to him. And beautiful thing is about it as well is that, it doesn't matter who you are, what you've done, it doesn't matter what mistake you're doing, it doesn't matter if, just like the hadith of the person who killed 99 people or 100 people, it doesn't matter who you are, you still pray, you still have to pray regardless of what you've done. But, even so, I'm saying that it's not actually a prayer. What I do for this, like when someone asks about what is this prayer or what is salah, I'll still call it prayer, but I'll explain what it is we actually do and what is the purpose of it. And that's how I found it's the best way of really doing this from my own experience anyway. Now the phrase of like good deeds, good actions, sorry. I think sometimes we might hear that like, by doing good deeds, you're going to go to heaven. Like, someone might explain to somebody, when they talk about Islam, is that like, oh, basically, you do good, be a good person, and, you do good actions, good deeds, and you go to heaven. I think that's like it's a really simplistic way of discussing what it's like, when it comes to good deeds and good actions, what that actually means in Islam. Because, just like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, on that day, men shall come forth in sundry bodies, that they may be shown their works. So he who has done an atom's weight of good shall see it, and he who has done an atom's weight of evil shall see it. So I mean, imagine, everything, yes, everything is recorded to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So every single thing that you do, good or bad, is all recorded to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so really, in Islam, we don't depend on just good deeds. Because just like the Prophet ﷺ said, follow the right course, seek nearness to Allah, and give glad tidings. Verily, none of you will enter paradise by his deeds alone. They said, not even you, O Messenger of Allah? The Prophet ﷺ said, not even me, unless Allah grants me his mercy. Know that the most beloved deed to Allah is that which is done regularly, and even if it is small.
Assalamu alaikum, Brother Abdallah. We did have someone put their hand up there. I don't know whether they wanted to come in and ask a question. I think it was Furkan Kaya. So I'm just going to take you off mute. If you want to ask the brother a question. So you're off mute now. Hold on. You're off mute. Hold on. This is the first time I've used this functionality, so you give me a second to get used to it.
Yeah, sure.
I can't take you off mute. You might have to do it at your end if you want to ask a question.
I can mute.
Or put it in the. We've got a question here. So we've got a comment from Imran. Salah can also be described as taking a break from the worldly chores and focusing on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and making a closer connection, which I think is a good point.
Exactly.
Sorry, to the person who wanted to come in, I can't seem to take you off mute, so I don't know if that's a problem at my end or your end, but if you've got a question, do feel free to type it into the chat box and we'll try and pick it up. Thank you.
Okay. And so, yeah, it's in Islam, we don't just depend on our good deeds. Because good deeds, you could do something good, but you can have a bad intention behind it. Obviously, like, we all know that al-amal bin-niyat, so actions are by their intentions. Everybody knows this hadith, but so like to say that, you just do good and you go to heaven, it's I feel like it's a very simplistic way of saying it, and it's not completely true. And that's the hadith of one of the hadiths about the action by intentions. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Verily Allah has ordered that the good and the bad deeds be written down." Then he explained it clearly how he intends to do a good deed, but he does not do it. Then Allah records it for him as a full good deed. But if he carries out his intention, then Allah, the Exalted, writes it down for him as from 10 to 700 folds, and even more. But if he intends to do an evil act and has not done it, then Allah writes it down with him as a full good deed. But if he intends it and has done it, Allah writes it down as one bad deed. And so even a deed in Islam has got, essentially different inputs. Even by not doing something bad, by holding back from doing something bad, that's classed as a good deed. And so I think when we're discussing this, like it's good. It's okay to say good deeds, but I think it's very important to explain as well what that actually means. As in, it's talk about your heart, it's talk about your intentions. What is your intention behind that deed? And even by doing good and you had a good intention with it, still the reason why you go into Jannah is not because of your good deeds, it's because of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because of his love, because of his mercy. Allah, he doesn't need to forgive you for all the things that you've done. And all of us do a lot of bad things. And Allah doesn't need to forgive us, but he does anyway. Inshallah. To every single one of us. And so yeah, that's why I believe, like, when we're saying good deeds to somebody when we're discussing Islam in the UK, is to explain some background information of what good deeds actually mean. And this is one of the things that some people, and I used to say this as well, it's like, people say, oh, what's the Quran? What's it about? And we might just say, to just kind of give a quick answer, it's like, it's our version of the Bible. It's kind of like our Bible. And I think that's quite of a very wrong way of saying it. Because number one, it's not actually the same. And saying, oh, it's like our Bible it's to me, it's kind of downplaying what the actual Quran is. And so what the actual Bible is made of, it's the Bible has got two sections. It's got a section called the Old Testament and the New Testament. The Old Testament is kind of the essentially the Jewish section. It's got stories of the prophets, Sayyidina Dawood, Sayyidina Musa, alayhi salam, many other prophets, and it's got history inside it as well. So it'll talk about kings, it'll talk about the ancient Israeli Empire, and it will have also statements of God. So like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you'll see phrases that are like quotations of what is meant to be Allah's speech. And subhanAllah, actually sometimes, because obviously we believe that the aspects of the Bible, the Old Testament and the New Testament, is aspects of it are still true, like it's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's revelation, because he sent the Torah, he sent the Injil. And so subhanAllah, sometimes when you look at the even Old Testament quotes of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, you can see it's actually quite similar in how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks in the Quran. But that's just a little side interest. But the main thing is, like, the Quran is purely, obviously, just like everybody knows, it's purely God's words. There's no human touch to it. It's Allah's speech. And that's the difference. I mean, that's probably, you know, we can't say that the Quran means the Bible. You know, you can kind of pretty much more say that the hadith books are equivalent to the Bible. It's human, what's it called? Basically, it's hadith collection of the Bible is, you know, it's people writing these things down. And so, you know, these things are equivalent, because hadith, you can have, you know, hadith Qudsi, so it's like quotes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's speech. You can have, obviously, some aspects of stories of the prophets, and maybe some history in there as well. But obviously, we've got even other books that are history, just pure history books. And so, yeah, I think what I'm just trying to get at this is that by saying that the Quran is, you know, our equivalent of the Bible, is like, number one, it downgrades to me what the Quran is, and it's actually not the same at all. It's, you know, the Quran is purely 100% Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's speech. And so I think when we talk about what the Quran is, I think just explaining what, just saying simply what it is, it's God's speech to us, to humankind, and not just using the oversimplification of like, oh, it's our equivalent of the Bible, and obviously talk about what does the Quran teach, what does it have, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say. Yeah. And this one, you know, I even up until, you know, quite recent, like I didn't really basically when I'm speaking to people, and you know, even my name is Abdullah, so my name can be translated in two ways. It can be either the slave of Allah or the servant of Allah. And you see in Quran translations as well, just like here, it's talk about the servants of the Rahman. So you can see that in the English text here, it says that, and the servants of the Most Merciful. But when you actually go on the actual word, and the slaves, so abd can be taken, if you're translating it, obviously I'm no, you know, literature expert or anything like that from Irish to English, but, you know, the word abd could be translated in English in two ways. It could be slave, or it could be servant. But generally, when I'm speaking to people, and I'm, you know, if I'm saying what my name actually means, or what are Muslims meant to be, we're meant to be servants of God. We're meant to be serving people for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you know, things like that. I tend to use the word servant all the time, and the reason for that really is because for this, I believe that when we speak to people, and if I don't have time to explain what actually slave of Allah mean, people can have the understanding of like what you see in the left image, like slave, like why would God call you a slave? But then servant of God has a best connotation when you're obviously when you just speak to someone generally here in the UK. And so saying about servant of God, I think it gives them a positive imagery. Unless if you have time to explain what slave of Allah means, then I'd say, you know, that'd be very good. But so like for me, basically this, like I always say servant of, you know, servant, we're the servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But then if I know within the conversation I'll have enough time to explain what slave would mean, slave of Allah, then I would use that. And I think I'll just finish off by playing this video, and what actually I think honestly is the best way to explain what slave of Allah means.
It's a powerful mercy that no one can stop. It's a boiling type of mercy. This is.
Sorry, can everybody hear the video? Sorry,
yeah. I think we've got it. Alhamdulillah.
It's fine.
Rasulillah. Brothers and sisters and friends, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. The Quran, brothers and sisters and friends, in chapter 39, verse 29 says the following. Allah propounds a similitude. A man has several partners quarreling, and a man the property of one. Are the two equal in likeness? Praise be to Allah, but most of them know not. La ya'lamoon. They know not. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is referring to the condition of a human being who is a slave to many slave masters, and the condition of a human being who is a slave to only one. And the one who is a slave to many slave masters, these slave masters disagree with one another. So whose condition is best? Now what's very interesting, if we reflect upon the Quran does not assume freedom. The Quran assumes slavery. Now this is a very negative word. But think about this, brothers and sisters and friends. We're all slaves. Every single one of us are in a state of slavery, but we know not, as Allah says in the Quran. Think about it. Did you choose your birth? Did you choose your place of birth? Did you choose your siblings? Did you choose your DNA? Did you choose the system that was created around you? Did you choose the society in which you were brought up in? Did you choose your parents? You didn't even choose your name. You didn't even choose your nationality, your ethnicity. You didn't choose your eye color, your skin color. You didn't choose the first few years of your upbringing that was so critical for your cognitive development. You had no choice, zero. So from this perspective, you're enslaved to these things. Just like the existential philosophers, they would say thrownness, that the human being is thrown into reality with no choice. It is no wonder the American writer once wrote that your birth, my birth, our births was like being born and then kidnapped and then sold into slavery, because you had no choice. Now don't say to me, oh, I have a choice. I could walk into the mall and I can choose between the cat heel shoe and the flat heel shoe. I have a choice, so I'm free. This is delusional. Let me explain with an example. I used to be a project manager. We used to have a personal assistant. She was a nice lady, and she used to wear some funny shoes. And me being who I am, I was quite intrusive, and I would ask her the question, why are you wearing those shoes? She would be startled. What do you mean? Because your heels are in pain. She had plasters, there was blood. Surely you didn't buy them for comfort. And she replied, well, they're making me feel good about myself. So I didn't stop there. I intruded further, and I asked her the question, why do you think it makes you feel good about yourself? So the questions continued, and do you know what she said at the end while taking off her shoes? She said, because other people think I look nice. She's enslaved to the perceptions of others, to the construct of beauty permeating this materialistic culture. So when she was in the mall and she thought she was free to choose between the cat heel shoe and the flat heel shoe, she's actually enslaved to the perceptions of others. So she's a slave. And she's a slave to many slave masters, as Allah says in the Quran. Materialism, the system, your boss, your CEO, your teacher, your husband, your wife, your parents, your children, your politician, your education. You have all of these slave masters and they don't truly know what's good for you. And Allah compares that condition to the one who has one slave master. And you know who that is? Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah said, the 14th century theologian, that the only way to attain freedom, to become a free slave, I know it's a paradox, but listen carefully, to become a free slave, then you worship Allah. The word for soul in the Quran is ruh, and it shares the same root as the word raha. Raha means serenity, liberty, freedom, peace. So it's as if the soul, the ruh, wants to achieve a raha, and the only way it can achieve this is by worshipping Allah. He is our one slave master. He is our one Lord. He is our one master, our Rabb, which means master, and which means the one that loves you, and the one that nurtures you, and the one that knows you better than you know yourself. And He loves us. As the Prophet ﷺ said, that Allah loves you and me more than our mothers love us. Allah is Ar-Rahman. Do you know what Ar-Rahman means? Ar-Rahman is a very intense word. It's a immediate mercy. It's an excessive mercy. It's a powerful mercy that no one can stop. It's a boiling type of mercy. This is Ar-Rahman. This is Allah. Your Lord is a Lord of mercy. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us He is our master. And not only is He Ar-Rahman, He is a Lord of mercy, but He knows you better than you know yourself, and He wants good for you and He loves you. So, reflect on chapter 39, verse 29. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, compare the state of these two people. The one with many slave masters, and they all disagree with one another, with the one who has one slave master. Who's in a better condition? So when people think you're not free, you don't have the freedom, you're not liberated, they're wrong, because in reality you're a free slave, and you found that freedom in the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So brothers and sisters, I'll end with this, a practical note. Sisters, when you go out in the media and you're wearing hijab, don't fall for the false liberal narrative that you're wearing it because it's just your freedom. Maybe that's true, but why don't you have a more empowered narrative? Why don't you say, this is a symbol of my emancipation. This is a symbol of my liberation through the worship of Allah. Because if you don't worship Allah, you're enslaved to 1,000 slave masters, and they don't know what's good for you, and they're quarreling. Capitalism, liberalism, socialism, Darwinism, neoconservatism, idealism, realism, secularism, all of these isms and schisms. Worshipping Allah makes you transcend these. And this hijab is a symbol of your emancipation through the worship of Allah, through the servanthood to the divine, through enslaving yourself to Allah's will, not to your own will. Because don't forget, another form of slavery is our desires, our ego. And you're saying this is a symbol of being free from my ego, being free from all of these slave masters, being free from other people's perceptions of beauty, this materialistic reductionist view on beauty, that beauty is just whether you have nice arms or nice eyes, but rather it's a holistic type of beauty that we should follow. Our deen is a deen of oneness, and beauty in Islam is considered in its holistic oneness, based on the inner and outer beauty. the energy, the spirituality of a human being, not just whether they have nice feet or nice eyebrows. So don't be enslaved to these notions. Show that you are liberated through the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that way, you're not incoherent. Because if you just always say that I'm wearing the hijab because I am free and it's based on freedom, then that means people wearing bikinis is fine in public. Obviously, from an Islamic ethical perspective, we think this is unethical. Obviously, we don't force ourselves on people. We articulate ourselves in a very compassionate, and we suggest our moral viewpoint in a compassionate way. But I'm just trying to show that you become incoherent. Because if it's okay for you to use this kind of nonsensical notion of freedom, then you have to apply it to everybody else. But therefore, that will go against your own ethical tradition. I'm not saying you don't have freedom, you don't have free choice. You probably do, but I'm trying to show you that be consistent. And if you really love for others what you love for yourself, really make them understand why you're wearing it in the first place. And believe me, it has nothing to do with materialistic notions of freedom or neoliberal notions of freedom. It's to do with the fact that you believe this book is from Allah. You do it because you worship and you love Allah. Brothers and sisters and friends, Allah, from a metaphorical perspective, has created a hole in our hearts. And every time we try and fill that hole with another ism or schism, another worldview ideology, with materialism, with the dunya, the ephemeral world, with money, fame, husband, wife, children, kids, possessions, there's another hole that appears. But once you fill that hole with the love of Allah, there are no more holes. So this Ramadan, and outside of Ramadan, reflect upon the Quran, understand whose slave you are, and when you realize that Allah is your master, you become a free slave. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Okay, so obviously it's a bit of a mouthful if you want to explain what slave of Allah means. But I think that video, like if you watch it and take snippets of what you think would be good a way of explaining what that means when you want to explain what slave of Allah means. I think in general, when we speak to people, it's just use servant of Allah. I think it's all correct, and it's still an easier if you don't have time to explain what slave of Allah means. I think that's probably the best way to do it.
Yeah, but Brother Abdallah, so Brother Imran on the text again has made a really, really good point, which I think is in line with what you're saying. He said the word slave in English is like a person who is a prisoner and has no rights or freedom, but in Islam we're not prisoners to the faith. So his feeling is that servant is perhaps a better translation. I think that kind of chimes with what you're saying, like to get across your point kind of quickly and succinctly to people. Maybe the kind of word servant is kind of good, but if you've got that kind of more time, then you can get into more depth. So yeah,
exactly. And that's it. Jazakallah for everybody for listening. If anybody has any questions, or if you if you disagree with something, if you think there's a better way of explaining something, go ahead and say it. Obviously we're all learning, and we want to give the message that to people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala deserves from us.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you, brother. That I thought that was a really, really good talk, and had a load of kind of points that have made me think. So yeah, if anybody does have any questions, there's a few kind of things you can do. There's the chat, the webinar chat box that should be available at the bottom of your screens. There's a Q&A button there as well, so you can type any kind of thoughts or questions. It doesn't have to be a question. You can just kind of have a general thought or comment, and we can put them to Brother Abdallah. If you're feeling really brave, you can stick your hand up and I can try and bring you off mute. I failed at that quite miserably earlier on, but maybe second time lucky for anyone who wants to kind of speak. Also, if you're on Facebook, there's a few people watching on Facebook live at the moment as well. So there's a little comment box on there as well. So do if you want to type any kind of thoughts or questions or anything in there, then we can put them to Brother Abdallah as well. So let me just get back. So we've not had any questions in so far. I mean, I guess kind of, I had a couple of reflections that I just kind of thought I'd put. Oh, sorry. There's a question from Surya, which is not about the presentation, but it's about the YouTube link. So yeah, we did promise we'd put this on YouTube, and for some reason it's not worked. So sorry about that. What we'll try and do later, if I can work out how to do it, is to upload the Facebook video onto YouTube and share it there. And we'll try and kind of fix that for next week. I can't quite figure out what's gone wrong there. So if you're expecting the YouTube channel, apologies about that, and we'll try and get it on there later. So yeah, just kind of some of my own thoughts. Yeah, I think that kind of point around kind of choosing your language carefully with people is something I kind of recognize, you know, like personally coming from a kind of a non-Muslim family who kind of, you know, their understanding of Islam comes from kind of other sources. Choosing your words carefully, I think, is very important. And the other, I guess, kind of question is how you kind of have those nuanced discussions when perhaps kind of people might have preconceptions or have their own perceptions around kind of what Islam is about, and yeah, so I don't know whether you've got any thoughts on that.
To be honest, I think that the best way is just to like if I've been ever, you know, I've been asked a lot of questions, especially like I've had some recently. I've met some well, a few years ago, I've met some Christian missionary friends, and so I used to get some good questions like about salvation, and you know, different hadiths, like those Arabic access hadiths. So, and you know, really, hadiths is like, it's, you know, it's essentially a massive, not only just a history book, but it's phrases, and like you need literally a method in understanding, or you know, how to interpret, how to extract things from hadiths. And we shouldn't just go into a hadith book and just pick out hadiths and say like, oh, this is, you know, this is what this is saying and that's that. But if I've ever been asked a tough question, or about, you know, someone pointed out hadith, I think the number one thing is, if I don't know what it actually means, or you know, if I don't know, if let's say I never heard the hadith before, or you know, I don't know about it, you know, I don't know how to answer it on the spot, I think a really important thing is just to say that you don't know, and say that, look, I'll look into this and I'll get back to you, because I think that's probably the most sincere way of doing it as well, because you're not just gonna blurt out any nonsense. And not only have you given them, you might have given them the wrong information, but then as well, you could have said something that's completely wrong about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or about Islam. And you might have even might even given that person a more negative impression of Islam. But if I know the answer, then I'll explain the context of whether it's the Quranic verse, whether it's the hadith, and it's just tackling. So like whatever the hadith is, whatever they ask you, it's just saying like, okay, well, this is what this actually means, and we know this because so and so and so, because there's these hadiths, and you look at the commentary of what scholars have said about this, or what have, you know, Muslims understood this, especially like when it's something historical. So like, how did the Sahaba understand what something the Prophet ﷺ said? And yeah, and I think also pointing out to somebody that hadiths as well, because a lot of people go to hadiths for when they, you know, let's say if someone, you know, has got if they don't like Islam, or if they maybe if they just something that come upon something, and it seems a bit you know, harsh or something. I think it's important to explain to them as well that what hadiths actually are, and telling them, you know, why why you need literally a certain science to be able to understand what you can take out from hadiths.
Yeah.
So I've just blurted out a lot of things there.
Okay, no, that was very helpful. Thank you. And just to finally wrap up, so we had a comment from Mufti Saeed. Thank you for that. So he says, I've got a Christian friend who has a question every time I go to pray at the office. Why isn't God answering your prayer? Basically, our idea of prayer is asking dua. I tell my friend I'm not only asking dua when I go to pray, but I am going to thank my creator. So yes, it really matters how we use our Islamic words. And there's a question there, which unfortunately we've not quite got time to get to the question. I'm really sorry about that. We've kind of timed out for the end, but maybe we'll ask Brother Abdallah to have a reflection on that, and perhaps we'll post it alongside the kind of video afterwards. So thank you. Okay, so we've got 3 minutes now until we hit the entry time for Maghrib. So I wonder if I can ask Brother Faraj maybe to close our talk with a dua, and then make the adhan for Maghrib. Is that okay, Faraj?
Maybe three minutes adhan Maghrib, inshallah.
Yeah. So
adhan after dua, adhan before dua.
Adhan after dua, please.
After, that's okay. 3 minutes.
Inshallah, yeah. So maybe we can make dua now and then have adhan after.
Now dua, brother?
Yes, please.
Yes, it's okay. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد صادق الوعد الأمين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم اجعلنا يا ربي بالصلاة على النبي من الفائزين، وعلى حوضه من الشاربين الواردين. يا رب لك الحمد كما ينبغي لجلال وجهك وعظيم سلطانك. يا رب لك العبد، يا رب لك الحمد، كلنا لك عبد. اللهم لك الحمد حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد في الأولين، وصل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد في الآخرين، وصل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد في الملأ الأعلى إلى يوم الدين. اللهم ارفع عنا هذا البلاء، اللهم ارفع عنا هذا البلاء، اللهم ارفع عنا هذا الوباء، اللهم ارفع عن البشرية جمعاء، اللهم ارفع عن البشرية جمعاء. اللهم يا ربنا احفظنا من فوقنا ومن تحتنا ومن بين أيدينا ومن خلفنا. اللهم احفظ علينا أولادنا، احفظ علينا زوجاتنا وأحبابنا وجيراننا ومجتمعنا وبلادنا وعالمنا يا رب العالمين. اللهم احفظنا بحفظك التام، اللهم احفظنا بحفظك التام. اللهم يا ربنا كل من أصيب بهذا الفيروس، اللهم يا ربنا عجل له بالشفاء، عجل له بالشفاء، عجل له بالشفاء يا سميع الدعاء. اللهم رحماك بالمرضى، اللهم رحماك بالمرضى، اللهم رحماك بالمرضى. اللهم تب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. عافنا واعف عنا يا كريم. اللهم اجعلنا هداة مهتدين. يا رب اهدنا واهد بنا واجعلنا سببا لمن اهتدى. اللهم اشرح صدورنا للإسلام، اشرح قلوبنا للإيمان، حبب إلينا الإيمان وزينه في قلوبنا، كره إلينا الكفر والفسوق والعصيان. اللهم اجعلنا من الراشدين، اللهم اجعلنا من الراشدين. اللهم يا ربنا أعنا على شهر رمضان الذي طرقت أبوابه مسامعنا. اللهم يا ربنا نسألك في هذه الساعة المباركة عنا على صيام رمضان وقيامه. اللهم ردنا إليك ردا جميلا، ردنا إلى كتابك ردا جميلا. اشرح صدورنا ونفوسنا وقلوبنا بالقرآن. اللهم ارفعنا وانفعنا بالقرآن العظيم. توفنا مسلمين، توفنا مسلمين، الحقنا بالصالحين. اللهم يا ربنا اهدنا واهد بنا واجعلنا سببا لمن اهتدى. اهدنا واهد بنا واجعلنا سببا لمن اهتدى. اللهم آمين، اللهم آمين. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين.
Jazakallah khair, Faraj. And I think we've now hit the entry time for Maghrib. So
هذا إن شاء الله. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله إنك لا تخلف الميعاد
Jazakallah khair. Thank you, Brother Faraj. And Jazakallah khair. Thank you, Brother Abdallah, for the presentation today. Again, I think it was really good, really thoughtful. There's a few people said thank you on the comments here as well. So Jazakallah khair. Thank you. Inshallah, we'll continue to hold these circles each Friday. The time will probably stay at around 7 o'clock now. For the next few weeks at least. Other announcements, to repeat the ones that we made at the Friday reminder, if people could continue to support the mosque and donate during this time, that'd be very helpful. There's a Quran recitation circle each Sunday after Fajr prayer with Imam Faraj, which we'll post the details are posted on Facebook, but we'll repost them just so everybody can access that. So that's for brothers. So those are the couple of announcements I had to make. Jazakallah khair. Thank you everyone for attending. Was there anything final you wanted to say, Brother Abdallah?
No, that's all. Honestly, thank you very much, everybody, for listening, and thank you, Ivan, for being the you know, the technical guy with all this and like sorting all this out, and it's just,
it nearly worked most of the time, so alhamdulillah. Okay, jazakallah. Yeah, thank you very much everyone. Okay, assalamu alaikum.